The last day of death row, inmate Gregory Hunt, his final gesture, shocked everyone. Hello friends, tonight we turn our attention to Alabama, where the state has once again returned to the execution chamber. After spending more than 3 decades on death row, 64-year-old Gregory Hunt was executed using nitrogen hypoxia at Holman Correctional Facility. His case stretches back to the summer of 1988, when a jealous rage and a violent night forever altered the lives of 2 families. For years, his appeals would focus on claims of an unfair trial. While behind bars, Hunt underwent a dramatic transformation, becoming a Bible study leader and spiritual figure to fellow inmates. But none of that could erase the brutality of the crime that placed him on death row. In this video, we'll walk through the shocking events that led to his conviction, the decades of legal battles, his final day, last meal, and final moments. Stay with us, and don't forget to subscribe to Deathwatch Diaries for more prison documentary stories. It was August 2nd, 1988, when the life of 32-year-old Karen Lane came to an end in her Cordova apartment. Lane, described by friends and family as a kind-hearted woman, had recently ended a brief relationship with Hunt, a man 7 years her senior who had been spiraling into drug and alcohol use. That evening, under the influence of both substances and fueled by jealousy after seeing Karen with another man, Hunt forced his way inside her home. What happened next was brutal. Medical testimony later revealed Karen had endured nearly 60 separate injuries. Her body carried the marks of fists, a broomstick, and even a bar stool. 20 of those wounds struck her head. The ferocity of the attack shocked even seasoned investigators. After Karen's death, Hunt confessed to the killing but denied ever committing sexual assault, a claim that would later fuel years of legal battles. Still, the state charged him with capital murder, combining the elements of robbery, assault, and homicide into one of the harshest indictments Alabama law could allow. Hunt's legal process began in 1990, just 2 years after Karen's death. His attorneys were appointed by the court, but had limited time and resources to prepare. In fact, records show his lead lawyer was only brought onto the case 3 months before trial, with the co-counsel arriving just weeks before it began. The prosecution leaned heavily on physical evidence, fingerprints, testimony from neighbors, and the medical examiner's grim report of the many weapons used in the attack. They painted Hunt as a jealous, violent man who turned a short-lived relationship into tragedy. During the sentencing phase, jurors voted 11-1 to recommend death. Under Alabama law, a unanimous vote was not required. Unlike in most states, the judge imposed the sentence. What the jury never heard about was Hunt's childhood. Born into a violent and alcoholic household, Hunt grew up in chaos. He lived at times in group homes, endured abuse, and began using drugs as a child. These facts might have been presented as mitigating circumstances, but his lawyers did not uncover or present them. Later appeals would focus on this absence, arguing that the jury had not been given the full picture. From 1928 until Gregory Hunt lived in one of the harshest corners of the American prison system, death row, at Holman Correctional Facility. The years were long, marked by repeated appeals, failed petitions, and the slow passage of time. But inside those walls, something unexpected happened. Hunt became a leader in his cell block, guiding other inmates through Bible study sessions. The Reverend Jeff Hood, who served as Hunt's spiritual advisor, described him as a man who had transformed his suffering into a kind of ministry. Hunt even wrote gospel songs, joking often that his singing voice sounded more like a weed eater than a choir leader. In interviews, Hunt spoke about prison as a kind of hospital for his broken mind. He said he wanted to show that even someone condemned could be a light in a dark place. To some who knew him behind bars, he became less the man who committed a terrible crime and more the man who tried to help others survive their sentences. Yet the shadow of Karen Lane's death never lifted. Her family never forgot the horror of her final moments. And though Hunt preached love and forgiveness inside the prison, outside those walls, the demand for justice remained strong. By early 2005, Hunt had exhausted all appeals. The U.S. Supreme Court denied his final petition in May, clearing the way for Alabama to set an execution date. On June 10th, his last day began at 5 in the morning. He was allowed to visit with his family and spiritual advisors until the afternoon. Reports note that his last meal was pizza, which he shared with both his loved ones and even one of the corrections officers who had watched over him for years. At 4 in the afternoon, Hunt was moved into an isolation cell, where he remained until just before the execution. Witnesses later said he appeared calm, even at peace, as the clock drew nearer to 6 in the evening. Unlike most executions in Alabama's past, Hunt's was carried out using nitrogen hypoxia, a method still new to the state. Instead of lethal injection, he was fitted with a blue mask that delivered pure nitrogen, displacing oxygen and causing suffocation. As the gas flowed, witnesses described Hunt raising his fingers in a thumbs-up and peace sign. Within moments, he began to struggle for air, gasping, lifting his head off the gurney, and then falling still. At 6 minutes past 6 in the evening, officials pronounced him dead. The procedure lasted only minutes, but it left those present shaken. The debate over nitrogen hypoxia has raged since Alabama first used it in 2024, with critics arguing it causes needless suffering. Hunt's case became part of that national conversation for the Lane family. However, the execution was not about Gregory Hunt. It was about remembering Karen, the 32-year-old woman who lost her life that night in 1988. Her family released a statement through the district attorney's office. Karen was shown no mercy. She was not given a second chance. Tonight is not about closure. It is about remembering the pain she endured and the life that was stolen from her. They recalled a quote engraved on her headstone by her mother. "Crime will not decrease until being a criminal becomes more dangerous than being a victim." Just a week before his execution, Hunt gave an interview to the Associated Press. In it, he reflected on his years behind bars, describing prison as a hospital to heal my broken mind. He said he hoped that if he could change, others could also learn to become people of love instead of hate. These words offered a stark contrast to the violence that had defined his past, whether one sees them as sincere redemption or the final words of a man trying to leave something behind. They are now forever part of his story. Gregory Hunt's execution stands out not just because of his crime, but because of the decades he spent waiting for the state to carry out its sentence. More than 30 years on death row meant that he became part of a unique chapter in Alabama's history. A man who lived through legal shifts, debates over execution methods, and the endless ticking of time. Some will remember him as a brutal killer. Others will remember the man who led Bible studies and tried to bring light to a place defined by darkness. But for Karen Lane's family, his execution was simple justice delayed, but not denied. In the end, the story of Gregory Hunt forces us to confront the uneasy balance between justice and redemption. For more than 3 decades, he lived on Alabama's death row, a place where he claimed to have found faith, peace, and even purpose. But no amount of change behind prison walls could erase the suffering of Karen Lane, a 32-year-old woman whose life ended in unimaginable violence back in 1988. Her family's words remind us that tonight was not about Gregory Hunt, but about Karen, her stolen future, her silenced voice, and the ripple of pain that never faded. Hunt's final moments, marked by a peace sign and quiet acceptance, stand in stark contrast to the chaos of his crime. Dear friends, stories like this reveal the complex human truths behind death row. Stay with us here on Deathwatch Diaries as we continue to bring you prison documentary stories that uncover the final hours of America's most haunting cases.